This is it. The final room of the dungeon. You've defeated monsters, survived traps, crawled your way through the labyrinthine depths, and now you're here. Your quest is almost at an end. You've come to slay the Lich, a being of unimaginable evil that holds the land in its icy grip. The Wraith sits before you on its ancient, crumbling throne, eyes flickering like dying candle flames. This should be a terrifying moment. At any other time, an encounter with the Lich would spell certain death. But not this time, and not for you. Because you know how to kill it. You've searched every inch of the dungeon and managed to find its heart, which you now hold in your hands. Destroy the heart, kill the Lich, once and for all. That's no secret. It's not some arcane knowledge you had to search for in the depths of a grimoire. It's just something you know. That's how liches work. Everyone knows that. Or at least now they do. Over the last few decades, liches have become something of an icon in fantasy pop culture. They're the end boss monsters, embodying the absolute heights of power and the abject depths of evil. Vecna, perhaps one of the most formidable Dungeons & Dragons villains of all time, is a mighty lich who nearly ascends to godhood. The Lich King Arthas from World of Warcraft commands an army of the undead, and much worse. The cosmic, unimaginably ancient, all evil-encompassing Lich in Adventure Time is less of a being and more of a force of nature. Everyone knows the Lich is the monster, the toughest of the tough, the baddest of the bad. But there's also something else about them. Something strange that you don't see in most ultimate evil end boss type monsters. Something that goes beyond mere evil. Here you are in the dungeon, ready to defeat the Lich. All you need to do is destroy its heart. But just as you're about to strike, you hear a voice rasping out from within the darkness of its hood. Finally, the Lich sighs. Do it, please. I've waited so long. For a moment, those burning eyes meet yours. Behind them, there is no spite, no wrath, no cruelty. Just simple, tragic misery. Really quick, before the video starts, I just want to tell you about Foundry behind the machines. There is a lot that goes into making this show, and a lot you will probably never see. But our humans, bit by bit, have started to share that process. Sometimes they'll stream their research, long before a video ever makes it into the pipeline. Sometimes they'll make forum posts, brainstorming an idea. Thumbnails are one of the funnest things to work on here, and they do a lot of that too. And sometimes they'll just hang out and play games and stuff. It's all right there in our Discord server, available to anyone who supports Foundry anywhere. You could become a YouTube member, you could join our Patreon community, you could even subscribe right in Discord itself. All of them cost exactly the same amount and will get you access to anything and everything behind the machines. Foundry has always been about more than just video content. We make these videos to inspire and to be inspired. A big thanks to everyone who joins us in that process. We couldn't make this show without you. Okay, thanks so much for listening. Now, on to the video. When you set aside all their incredible powers and intricate backstories, liches really tend to be known for one thing in particular: cheating death. In essence, they're necromancers that intentionally reanimate themselves. It's usually a process that requires the lich to remove its own heart from its body, if not literally, symbolically. They take their life essence, their mortality, their soul, and put it into a vessel outside of themselves. This becomes what is sometimes referred to as the lich's phylactery, a protective totem which holds the key to their unlife. It could be a jar or a box or a gem. It could be an animal. On at least one occasion, I've even seen this done with another living person. Liches are unkillable because they've taken everything that gives them life and put it someplace else. It's a creative way to circumnavigate death, but it's also nothing new. The Lich did not come up with this idea. Actually, as far as fantasy creatures go, the Lich is a fairly recent invention. They've only really existed since the late 60s after one appeared in a short story by Gardner Fox called The Sword and the Sorcerer. The idea of gaining power or safety by removing your soul from your body is a theme you can find in stories throughout history, in fairy tales and folklore from around the world. In fact, it shows up so often, there's a whole category for it in the Arn Thompson Uther Index, a tool used to catalog folktales. It's filed under ATU 302, the giant who had no heart in his body. Notice that. The giant, not the lich. This is where things start to get interesting. One of the most well-known variants of this archetype comes from Norway, a story called simply The Heartless Giant. If you want to find it and read it yourself, it was recorded in a collection called Norwegian Folktales by folklorists Asbjørnsen and Moe. In this version of the story, the hero, a young boy, must defeat a giant who has turned his brothers into stone. There's just one problem. The giant can't physically be harmed or killed. Like the title says, he has no heart, at least not inside of him. With the help of the giant's captive princess, the boy eventually learns its hiding place. In an egg, under a duck, inside a well, in a church, on an island, in the middle of a lake. Suffice it to say, the giant really did not want this thing to be found. To me, there's something almost innate about this story archetype. On some level, it just makes sense that someone might want to make a trade like this. The soul for eternal life, humanity for safety. It reminds me of the classic Deal with the Devil story, the Faustian bargain. But it's not that. The villains in these older stories, and the liches in more modern versions, are rarely ever tricked into making this trade. They do it because they want to. Davy Jones is one of the most feared pirates on the Seven Seas. He's also an unkillable sea monster. He has a crab claw for an arm, a mane of writhing tentacles, a host of supernatural powers, and no heart in his body. That he cut out, locked away in a chest, and buried on an island far away. He keeps the keys on his person at all times for good measure. He's a lich, in all but name. In the third Pirates of the Caribbean movie, At World's End, we see why. And I think it's interesting because it's a bit different from what motivates most liches. Once upon a time, Davy Jones fell in love with the sea goddess Calypso. For 10 years, he served her, ferrying the souls of those who died at sea on to the next world. And at the end of those 10 years, she swore she would finally meet him in the flesh and spend one day together. When she inevitably broke her promise, his heart broke with it. Blinded with rage at the betrayal, he exacted his vengeance by trapping her in a human body and claiming the sea for himself with his pirate brethren. But he still loved her, and over time the guilt of his betrayal began to weigh upon him. Unable to live with the pain, he eventually carved his own broken heart from his chest and hid it away, the first step in becoming the unkillable monster we see in the movies. Liches, more than anything, want to feel safe. Safe from death, yes, but not just that. Safe from life. Safe from anguish. Safe from weakness and from fear. Safe from all the horrible things that humans simply can't avoid because to feel them is part of being human. Liches know that to escape all of those things will cost them their soul because all of those things come from having a soul. It's a price the lich is willing to pay. They aren't stupid. They know what they're sacrificing. It's what they want. Like Davy Jones, when they lose their hearts, it's not only a physical loss. It's metaphorical, too. This is what makes the whole thing worthwhile for the lich, despite the horror of its eternal undeath. It's a sacrifice, but that's the point. The lich isn't just trading its soul, it's getting rid of it. Your heart can't be broken if nobody can ever find it. Your life can't end if it's already over. You can't be vulnerable if you have nothing left to lose. But isn't that also a terribly ironic choice? In order to live forever, give up your life? I think that's a really important and compelling part of the whole phylactery idea, actually. Find the Heart, Kill the Lich isn't just a fun way to put a MacGuffin into a fantasy story. It's an extension of the metaphor. The only way to be safe from life, after all, is not to have one. There's another fairy tale from the Heartless Giant category that I think puts a really fine point on this. It's called Tsarevich Pyotr and the Wizard and features the famous Russian folklore sorcerer Kashay the Deathless. In most of the stories he appears in, he's a powerful wizard with his own fortress. This time, he's the most powerful wizard alive, and instead of a mere fortress, he basically has his own small kingdom. His palace is encircled by 3 concentric moats, each guarded by a monstrous ferryman. It rests atop the peak of the region's highest mountain, wrapped about by an enormous, sleeping snake. By every count, impregnable, safe from harm. So, was it really necessary then for him to do the whole lich thing? He's cautious about it, no doubt. He keeps his life inside of an egg, inside of a duck, inside of a hare, inside of a hollow log, floating in a pool at the center of a faraway island. But if he hadn't done that, there's almost no way the hero of the story would ever have stood a chance of defeating him. Even if he just kept the egg in his palace with him, he would have been so much better off. In a way, I think this irony is actually sort of central to the idea of the Lich in all its incarnations. Would the little boy have been able to slay the mighty giant if his heart had still been in his body instead of in an egg? Would anyone ever have been able to best Davy Jones if there wasn't a heart to find and stab somewhere outside of him? When you phrase it that way, it makes the Lich sound like a foolhardy creature. But I don't really think of it like that. In fact, the cutting your heart out thing, the soul removal ritual, whatever it may look like in fantasy, really seems to map well onto a lot of far more mundane, far more human behaviors. I think of Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights, a character in a far more realistic setting. He protects himself by constructing an identity based on control and self-isolation. His childhood as an orphan is full of abuse, and he's constantly seen as an outsider. After being rejected by the woman he loves, he becomes bitter and cruel. Any closeness or vulnerability he feels is an opportunity to get hurt. I also think of Joel from The Last of Us. When his daughter dies, he tries to forget what it means to connect to other human beings. He hides his heart away. When Ellie inevitably discovers it, it practically destroys him. On a more physical level, I think of characters like Darth Vader or Immortan Joe from Mad Max, ostensibly powerful beings with every resource at their disposal, who nonetheless appear to have traded their humanity for power and longevity. After all, fear of death doesn't necessarily have to mean resorting to undeath. Liches, of course, are not alone in their desperate mortal terror. The inevitability of death, of growing old, of knowing that one day the body will stop working altogether, that's something that weighs heavily on the minds of every living being who can think of it, both in fantasy and in real life. So, really, liches are doing the same thing as all these other more realistic characters, just in a more literal sense. They're cutting themselves off from the source of pain and fear at any cost. Their fear of vulnerability is so great, in fact, that they're prepared to take the risk of making themselves even more vulnerable to master it. It's a bit paradoxical, but that's what being a lich is all about. Giving up your heart, your soul, for all the ways in which it makes you vulnerable. So, here you are in the dungeon. In one hand, you hold the lich's heart. In the other, the sword that will destroy it. The monster stares at you with pleading, hollow eyes. This creature, who has lived hundreds of years beyond its natural life, who has amassed unthinkable power and terrorized generations of mortals, this thing that has defeated death itself, now wants to die. Doesn't that feel wrong? There's something almost profane about it, right? Not that the lich has sacrificed its soul, but that even after this immense sacrifice, the loss of its heart and humanity, detachment from the world, an eternity of unlife, it just wants to throw it all away? You stand before an enemy that refuses to defend itself, and you feel confused, disappointed, maybe even a little angry. Why wouldn't it protect itself? Why wouldn't it buy itself another 1,000 years of safety before the next adventurer comes along? Wouldn't you? In real life, humans can't actually cut their hearts out of their bodies and put them in boxes, but that doesn't stop you from trying, at least metaphorically. Some of you put up walls to keep others out. Maybe you avoid certain experiences for fear of what could go wrong. You throw time and money and belief into products and personalities that promise you won't age or die. You bury your emotions because you're too afraid to let anyone see them, or worse, confront them yourself. The truth is that the Lich isn't unique in its ironic, life-destroying fear. In fact, I think it's among the most common feelings in the world, which is perhaps why the Lich has become such a resonant villain. People are willing to go to serious, sometimes even dangerous lengths to avoid that feeling of vulnerability. Maybe undeath isn't a realistic consequence, but, I mean, what else do you call a life that isn't spent living? So, after a moment of hesitation, you do it. You shatter the Lich's heart and watch it crumble to dust. The cavern reverberates with a final utterance that sounds almost like relief. And that's it. Story over, mission accomplished. You'd always imagined that this would be a moment of triumph, that once you finally vanquished the Lich and liberated the land, everything would feel right in the world again. But as you make your way out of the dungeon, as you emerge into the warm light of the living world, all you feel is wistful. It was never supposed to be that easy. The Lich didn't even put up a fight. And now, you almost wish it had. In a way, it would have made things easier. You wanted an epic final battle, a hard-won victory. You wanted to find an enemy, not this tragic, hopeless thing. Without knowing it, you had hoped the Lich's sacrifice would be worth it, that removing its soul would have meant something. Because deep down, you know that if offered the same trade, you may just have taken it. Liches are beings of emptiness. That's what makes them so tragic. They've traded everything that could possibly make life fulfilling for an eternity of nothingness. If you were to think of a physical representation of emptiness, you'd probably think of something like the Lich, a monster. You probably wouldn't think of an angel. This is Da'at. It's one of the closest things I've ever seen to an accurate artistic depiction of the void. It's a being of pure absence. Ethereal forms rotate around its arms, each shining a light through its cavernous body. This is Gedriel, Angel of War, a surreal portrait of serenity carved in alabaster, a giant even among his own kind. This is Armoros, Angel of Undoing, a confusion of disparate parts wandering through the wastes, barely held together with loops of woven thread. They all come from the Angelarium books by artist Peter Moorbacher. It is among the most ambitious solo artist projects I've ever seen. When Peter discovered how many named angels there are across world history, he set out to create this, an illustrated, story-driven encyclopedia of the divine. It's his own original take, inspired by each of the angels he's found. Angels of nature, angels of the zodiac, concepts, major arcana, every aspect of human nature. He even designed an entire angelic alphabet. Of course, you know me. The thing I'm most excited about? The books. The Book of Emanations and the Book of Watchers detail a surreal journey through the world of these angels, the Angelarium itself, as an actual space. I'll try not to spoil anything here, but what I can tell you, Angelarium is not just beautiful art. It is a story, as beautifully constructed as each individual angel within it. I cannot recommend these books enough. They'll look beautiful on your shelf and in your mind. We actually reached out to Peter because we wanted to share this with you, and he was cool enough to sponsor the video. Right now, both Angelarium books are on sale together for $85, which is already 15% off the sticker price. But if you use code TaleFoundry20 at checkout, you'll also get an additional 20% off that price. So that's like $68 for 2 books, normally priced at $100? Honestly, if you want to own these, I think this is the cheapest way you'll ever get them. That same code will also net you 20% off anything in the Angelarium shop, including angel-themed tarot decks, collectible art cards, angelic enamel pins, even playmats featuring full art of the angels themselves. I personally own this Gavura one, which I adore. Again, visit angelarium.shop and use code TaleFoundry20 to get an additional 20% off both books when you buy them together, or anything else in the Angelarium shop. Thanks again to Peter for sponsoring this one. He's been an awesome artist to work with. Go show him some support. Anyway, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next week. Bye!